The other thing, there are certain transfers of the house that, other than a spouse, that are allowable to a child with a disability.
Okay.
You can give any asset to a child under 21 or a child who has a permanent disability, and that's an okay transfer, no penalty there.
Does it have to be a direct child under 21? Could be a grandchild under 21?
No, it has to be a child.
Okay.
Okay, a dependent. You can also transfer your house to anyone who had a child who has lived in the home with you for 2 years before you go into an institution and has provided care for you that kept you out of that institution.
But they have to be under 21.
No, in that case, it doesn't matter what age they are. The criteria are that they have to be, 1, a child, 2, have lived in the home with you for 2 years and provided care to keep you out of the nursing home. So again, these are the little nuances of planning.
Yeah, you're right. We could get down in the weeds there. Let's not do that.
But there are right. So there are certain things, but generally, people are in a conundrum. They're allowed to keep their house, but if they're a single person, where's the income going to be to maintain the property? And people also need to be aware of something called estate recovery. So after a Medicaid beneficiary passes away, if they have a surviving spouse, that spouse gets all their assets with no claim by the state.
Okay.
But if they have no surviving spouse, or when the surviving spouse passes away, if they've received Medicaid for long-term care services after the age of 55, the state can put a claim in against the estate to claw back some of the funds that they paid. And so often, if you're on Medicaid, you've really spent down all your liquid assets, or you wouldn't be on Medicaid anyway.
Sure.
So the home becomes, if you hung on to the home, it becomes the only asset that is available to try to satisfy this claim. Right. Now, certain assets are not subject to estate recovery. Things that pass outside the will, like life insurance, things that go through a trust, retirement assets.
Oh, okay, trust. What if they put their house in a trust?
Okay, so the trusts, there are 2 types of trusts, irrevocable and revocable. There's a million types of trusts, but I'm generalizing.
Quick difference between the 2.
Okay, so putting your home or any asset in an irrevocable trust does not protect it from Medicaid, because if it's
REV,
not IREV,
right.
R revocable trust, because if it's revocable,
it can be
you have access to the asset, so the state's not going to recognize that.
Okay.
They're going to say you can get that out of the trust and you can spend it.
Right.
You can pay for your care with it. If you put it in an irrevocable trust, you still have to get past the 5-year look back, because you've made a gift to the trust.
Okay.
That's a transfer into the trust. You don't own the asset anymore, but you still have to make sure you can get past 5 years. Nobody has a crystal ball about their health care. And you also have to be careful about putting assets even in an irrevocable trust, because assets that are going to pass through a trust, especially a home, it's a risky situation where you may be protecting the asset for Medicaid, but exposing it for a less advantageous capital gains situation when it goes to your heirs. So, these things, they have to work hand in hand, and you have to be really careful.
Let's go down a rabbit hole for 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
So in the irrevocable trust, couldn't you have the beneficiaries be your heirs so that and when you die, it's not part of your estate? Just your portion?
Right, but if it's not part of your estate, you do not get the capital gains advantage. It isn't part of your estate. That's the problem. Right? Now, there are tricky ways, and I'm not an accountant, but there are certain ways, and no one's sure, and it's risky business, certain powers of appointment or certain kinds of, and that's fine if you can be sure of that, and that you're talking to a good trust person, a good lawyer, a good accountant to make sure. You just don't want people thinking they found the magic bullet.
That's not something to do willy-nilly. Okay.
Correct.
Get some advice.
Right. So there's always risks, to doing some of these things, even with good advice, because laws change, right? What was in place when you made that transfer, and you thought, well, Medicaid laws change, tax laws change, things like that. So, there's lots of opportunities, but you have to be educated about what you're doing, educated about the pluses and minuses, and then, again, you make a decision based on that, but you got to make sure you have good information. So trusts are, again, a tricky vehicle. They can be very useful and they can protect your asset, but they may have other impacts that you're not expecting or not wanting.
And okay, do you think we covered the house sale topic with terms of Medicaid planning? Or are there more
the only
things you
thing
wanna
so
make sure
people
you-
should know that the house is an exempt asset until it is sold.
Okay.
First of all, non-residential real property, your house up the mountains or your house down the shore is not exempt.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to have to probably sell that house.
Okay.
If you gave it to your kids more than 5 years ago, you're good. But again, there's a capital, they're going to have less advantageous capital gains problem. If you sell your primary residence and do not use the money to buy another primary residence, right? So like the spouse in the community might sell the home and go, okay, I don't need this big house anymore, and buy a different one, and that's okay. But if you don't, and it remains, the proceeds, cash, then it is no longer an exempt asset, and you're going to have to spend that money down to get back to the Medicaid eligibility level.
Got it.
Now, there's some question about, transferring the house to the spouse in the community, and then if the spouse sells it, they're entitled to all the proceeds because you've taken that nursing home spouse, but Pennsylvania's on the bubble. It's about whether they're going to try to say that some of that money is attributable to the nursing home spouse. Again, you have to be aware of what's going on with the law at the time.